All right, hi everyone. My name's Richard Gonzalez. I'm the director with College of Biomedical Equipment Technology here in San Antonio, Texas. We're excited today to bring you together two fantastic individuals, the CEO and president of Summit Imaging up in Washington State, and the president and CEO of the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology here in Texas. So I'm happy to introduce these two gentlemen, and we'll start off with Larry.
Hey everyone, Larry Wynn, CEO of Summit Imaging, an ultrasound and mammography equipment support organization. And, we're up here in Seattle and, helping the HTM community get the parts they need to service their own equipment.
Hey everyone, I'm Bill Bastick. I'm the president of College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, and I'm here in San Antonio, Texas, and we're here to support everyone through education, and also want to thank everyone who are on the front lines at the hospitals right now, the biomedical technicians, HTM personnel that are on the front lines, taking care of equipment right now, and just thank you for all the hard work you're doing. And we know that you're putting yourselves at risk while you're doing this, and we just ask you all to be safe, be careful, and be very cautious of your surroundings.
Absolutely. Same sentiment up here from Summit Imaging. We love HTM. We love healthcare. And, and especially during times like this, just expressing how grateful we are for all the front lines people that are supporting and taking care of all the sick patients right now. So thank you so much, and, continue on with the great work.
All right. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. As we get started today, I just want to introduce the topic. The topic saturating the market at the moment is obviously the COVID virus and the effect on the healthcare industry. But we want to just take a little bit of a departure and dive into another topic that's also influencing the industry in a significant way, and that's right to repair. So I'd kind of like to lead this conversation off, if we could, with Larry, and just kind of give him an opportunity to talk about how he feels this particular dynamic is shaping in the industry and informing the direction that we're going and issues related to it.
Well, it's a big topic right now. It's been a big topic for a very long time. And, our view on the right to repair is, healthcare facilities, have the right to identify and use, the services they choose to use to reduce their service costs. But, I think the biggest piece that we see as a huge benefit for healthcare is for these healthcare facilities to take their service in-house. It's not the solution for all healthcare facilities, but, we're seeing a massive transition on healthcare facilities actually developing and building their own healthcare technology management departments, because the density of equipment and the quantity of equipment is so high in these facilities that it makes a ton of sense to actually have a staff on site where their sole responsibility is to service and repair the equipment in that facility. And, there's a lot of benefits that come with that. And, the one that we celebrate the most with in-house engineering teams is the fact that the response time is instantaneous. You don't have to make a traditional phone call and wait for an external service engineer to come to you. It's a quick, call or a text, and they're already in the building. They're right there. And so they're at the equipment ready to diagnose that instantaneously and get the right parts if needed to be delivered as quickly as possible. And so there's no more of that, the lag time to wait for an engineer to come in. It's reducing that downtime. It's increasing equipment utilization. It's increasing the capacity of facilities to see patients. And at the end of the day, we're hearing a massive savings as well. So it's a great way to bend that expense curve of service and maintenance down, relative to more traditional models that we've seen over the past decade.
I agree. And I think with the right to repair is the best way to be able to obtain those services as an independent service organization is to have the hospitals negotiate in advance before they purchase the equipment on what their expectations of the maintenance will be and the repair side of it. And what we try to teach is to make sure that they encourage to be able to get trained if at all possible. That's included with the purchase of whatever piece of equipment that they're trying to acquire. And then also see if they can get the service manuals for them, the passcodes. And as Larry was mentioning earlier, it is a benefit for the hospital because the response time is immediate. It saves on downtime for the customer, which is the hospital, which in turn generates more revenue. The more uptime the hospital has, the more revenue that's generated through the departments performing the diagnostic testing on these devices.
Yeah, and just kind of adding on to that, you're looking at patient access. So if you can actually maintain that cost of healthcare and not allow it to continue to rise, and if possible, actually lower that threshold to make healthcare more affordable for more people. I think, one of the big metrics that everybody's always looking at is population health, and something that hospitals look at very carefully. And patient access is extraordinarily important for population health because, it's pretty intuitive that, if you are sick or whatever it may be, and you go see a doctor, that chances are that you're going to get better relative to not seeing a doctor at all. And so, that patient access piece, especially during these times, right? Access is incredibly important. And right now, I think, with the whole COVID crisis right now, our healthcare system is, being pressure tested to see how much access there really is. So, again, thank you to all the frontline, workers and staff that's, treating all the patients out there. But, again, it's all about access. It's all about capacity. It's all about being flexible to see, to manage expenses is one piece, but the other piece is to be able to quickly scale and really be able to absorb, a large number of patients when needed.
Unfortunately, with this COVID that's embraced us all here in the United States or worldwide, it's going to have the right to repair. The OEM, the original equipment manufacturers, and the independent service organizations are probably going to end up working more closely together because they're going to realize they're going to have to depend on each other. One, based on the volume, and two, what Larry had stated earlier, is the hospitals are going to be strict as who gets to come into the hospital, who gets to leave. With all the social distancing now that we have to do, we're probably going to have to work more we'll have to work together just to reduce the amount of germs that are spread. We'll have to, make sure that unnecessary people don't just come to the hospital whenever, right now it's pretty open. When the manufacturer is called, a lot of times they just come in and don't go through any safeguarding protocols. And that's all going to change. This COVID now is going to have all of that change.
All right, thanks, guys. The next question I have for you is a little bit of a loaded question given the current environment. But what do you see as the effects of these repair restrictions on the healthcare industry market in the United States? And I do think that's a fair question, especially given the current environment.
Well, that's true. Well, the effects on the repair restrictions, I think cost is one of them. If the right to repair doesn't fall in the favor of the independent service organization, then the hospital cost will end up going up from that, because now it turns into a monopoly pretty much, where the manufacturers have the right to set the prices however they want to set them that way. And it disables the freedom for us to choose on what we have. Right now we have multiple vendors that we could choose from, and that would definitely cripple the industry as far as costs are concerned. Larry?
Yeah, I think, kind of looking at the current environment that we're all going through together internationally, looking at, repair restrictions, for us, I think this is really going to promote a lot more innovation on how to repair equipment. What I see the change here is I think that this is going to breed a lot more creativity on how to ensure that we all have the right equipment ready for all the patients. And, for us, we work on ultrasound, but, we think that there's a lot of solutions that could be built out there, whether it's in hardware form or in software form, to be able to, not so much navigate repair restrictions, but, respect all of the intellectual property out there, respecting all the regulations, and doing these repair and service method in a way that is new and innovative. And that's what our reputation is about. And we think that there's room to be able to grow from that, which the entire industry is going to be able to win and reduce costs of service and reduce patient care costs, and thus bringing more patient access to the general population. So, for us, to repair restrictions is not so much of a hurdle. It's more of an opportunity to see what are the other methods on how HTMs can service their equipment.
Correct. I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, that we've talked a little bit about here at the school is that, when you start limiting options for consumers, what you see is an increase in prices, restriction in choices, extended timelines for repair and services, and shortened equipment life cycles. And those were the topics that were circling this question when we formulated it before this discussion. But now I think you guys are really pointing to the bigger issue too, which is reality is forcing that sort of innovation and maybe bringing closer the two opposing forces, if you will, the OEMs and the independent service providers, to meet the need. And, if there's an upside to the current crisis, perhaps it's facing reality that people need access to this information to repair the technology that's life-saving. So I think
and I think this is where we're being pressure tested, right? I think I saw on the news that Medtronic is actually open sourcing one of their ventilators because they simply cannot produce enough. So I think that it is a huge step forward. But I think this is also really kind of looking towards the FDA report that was released that actually says that there is no quality issues with independent service providers. And you look at independent service providers, to us, there's no difference between an in-house clinical engineering team and an independent service provider, because you're doing the exact same methods. It's just whether you're employed by an independent or by a healthcare facility, but methods are usually the same. And so, I think, these repair restrictions that we're talking about, it really is, a healthcare facility's right to repair their own equipment. And I think that's really important to preserve.
I understand. I agree with you on that. I do see the point for the original equipment manufacturer. They're trying to make sure that whoever is repairing the equipment has the proper training or was trained from a credible source, a credible institution. And I think that's probably one of their biggest concerns. However, now moving forward with this, I think the way I see the future for HTM as we know it now, it's going to change drastically. We are forced to work more closely with one another. We're going to be friendlies instead of being against one another here. And I think there's going to be plenty of work for everyone. And as you mentioned earlier with mass production now of these ventilators, even before this mass production, there's a ventilator company out there now, I'm not going to mention their name, but they outsourced a lot of their stuff in the rural areas because they just didn't have the manpower to cover that. And they would have pods in rural areas where they would do the training for them, provide the training for the independent service organization or the in-house organization that needed it.
So this topic is a kind of a nice segue into our next discussion point. And there's a a buzz going around about Internet of Things and how that's revolutionizing the healthcare industry and bringing to the forefront interest and concern regarding networked medical devices and concerns and how those things are all affecting and shaping what we're doing. On the academic side, Bill, I know you've been focused a lot on sort of topics associated with new job task analysis and the trajectory and future of academics and those support structures we need to put in place for technicians. Now that's reshaping and leveraging hard our relationship with our industry partners like Summit Imaging. But I don't know if, gentlemen, if you have thoughts on how IoT is affecting all this conversation and the direction that it's going, particularly in this new environment with COVID introduced as a major concept.
I think that's actually a pretty intense question, but it requires lots of thought. And the way I look at this, it's forcing us to align ourselves with different companies to increase the training, the quality of the training. What was once a brick and mortar, people were freely going to brick and mortars, are now going to be looked at a little more differently. I know that online in the past was scrutinized, saying you cannot get a good education through online training. And now with what we're forced to do with the social distancing, they're going to see through our alliances and developing the new curriculum that we need, virtual reality that's coming out, augmented reality, that the online training is actually going to be just as good, if not better, in the future as we continue to enhance this program and develop it.
Yeah, IoT gets us very excited at Summit Imaging. And the reason being is that, the technology enables a level of accuracy and a speed that cannot be matched by the physical movement of human beings. To be able to be fed information of hardware performance data, in particular of a medical device, being pushed at a high frequency, it takes an engineering team or HTM team, and it could double or triple its capacity, because a traditional service call would be, hey, I need to go arrive at a machine and I need to now understand and diagnose what the failure could be. And then I would need to, procure parts, and then I would need to wait for the parts and then go install it. There's actually many steps in there that could be automated through IoT. It's going to be a long process because I think with machine learning is fantastic, but in artificial intelligence, but we got to put in real intelligence first. So kind of looking at the tribal knowledge of the HTM team now, who's been doing in this industry, who's been doing this a very long time, kind of gathering that information and then aggregating it in a way to where we can have statistic probabilities on what specific assemblies or components are failing in a specific device, if we can collect that data. And I think one of the things that we had touched on before was when the next pandemic occurs, because there will be another one, we will be more prepared with IoT. And with IoT, we'll enable natural social distancing to prevent more bodies from needing to enter these healthcare facilities to help contain the spread and flatten the curve. But in addition to that, if there needs to be service performed on a machine, it could be done possibly preemptively, because you're seeing all the performance data and you may be able to catch the equipment at a premature failure rather than being called at a catastrophic down. And so this kind of talks about the workload of the technicians who are in the users of the equipment. But there's so much that you can automate during this process and have absolute accuracy into what that system is doing and what it needs. It's going to absolutely transform the industry. And I think this particular crisis is actually going to start, once we start exiting this crisis, it's going to push companies to be, looking into this technology a bit more, because it's a natural solution to something like this. And the code doesn't care, right? The cloud platforms that run all this code don't care if there's more data coming in. They're just processing more data instead of more equipment being used. Requires more engineers today to infiltrate these facilities to work on the system. And so, yeah, I mean, the IoT technologies kind of coming out and that are coming out are absolutely amazing. And it's going to transform how HTM works. And in addition to that, with a lot of baby boomers that are in this space with the mass retirements that are occurring right now, we need more HTMs. And that's a hard solution. And you guys are doing a phenomenal job of getting more people to pursue this career to help healthcare. But there's a lot more people retiring than are entering the space for this career. So how do you supercharge them, and how do you increase their capacity? How do you increase their efficiency? It's all through technology and software and IoT.
No, I agree with you, Larry. And when I addressed it from the education point of view, but looking at it from the service point of view, there's other industries out there that are already using IoT. Take NASA, for example. They're fixing things with no hands-on, everything's automated, and we are going to be forced to pretty much do that to reduce the amount of contagion that you can get just from having hands-on. So I understand that 100%. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's really interesting that all of this technological innovation is driving us so powerfully in a certain direction, and that there are many alignments between what's going on in the industry and what's going on in education. And similar to the revolution that's taking place in the healthcare industry, we're seeing the same thing in education with archaic, outdated brick and mortar models really giving way to an acceptance of online delivery of education. There's no better example of that than the current transition. With really a snap of the fingers, every university in the United States is suddenly an online university. So we suddenly have instant credibility with the delivery methodology that we adopted many years ago to deliver that education, and which is really at the tip of the spear. And the reason it is because of our relationship with our partners like Summit Imaging, and that was really our next topic. So this will be a good segue to that. Is one of the things that has made the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology successful, probably one of the most important factors, is the fact that we have teams like yours, Larry, that have willingly contributed content, data, expertise, guidance, leadership to our team to develop curriculum that meets the industry's needs. So, Bill, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about, a partnership and, what that means for the college and our students that ultimately end up back in the industry working for the Larrys and our other friends out there that are running these great companies, how that relationship works.
Yeah, thank you. It's critical. Our relationship with the partners, it enables us to get the data, correct data, the most recent data to the student, where the students get the current training. So they don't receive archaic training. They receive state-of-the-art training that's today's futuristic training, and for the future that's coming.
Big topic. Well, really, there's two more issues we wanted to cover. One is looking at the reality of the situation. And we've done, back to right to repair, focusing on the topic of this webinar presentation. One of the areas that we have been looking closely at and kind of concluded as a reality that maybe is not as widely acknowledged is the fact that even the OEMs are sending their own employees to independent service provider training organizations for their employees to get trained on other OEM pieces of equipment. to handle the requirements of their own contracts in these healthcare facilities and hospitals. So we really do have a David and Goliath situation where some of these companies are both David and Goliath. So we understand and respect proprietary information and having ownership in that and safeguarding and protecting that. But we have to balance that against the realities that there's a need to know and there's a need for the knowledge and there's recognition of the equal value of ownership in these devices and the fact that at the end of the day, we're out there trying to save lives. So I think it's an interesting balance that has to be struck. And I think there's some give and take. But I think maybe there's been a little bit too much take. And so I'm just wondering what your perspectives are on that reality.
Well, I can speak from our side. We work with a lot of organizations that, kind of fit that bill. And, for us, it's less about the topic of, who's servicing the equipment, but more importantly about, is that equipment available to serve patients? And what is the quickest way to get that equipment functioning the way it needs to function so we can increase the capacity of healthcare? Like I said before, right now we are going to be pressure tested with this COVID-19 crisis. And as you can see, even here in Seattle, we got field hospitals coming up. We got Navy medic ships going to New York and to LA, I believe, right now. There's so many things that are going on that is exposing that the traditional model of waiting for the equipment to be fixed, or the traditional model of waiting for more equipment to come, isn't fast enough when we need it. And this is just an amplification of what happens on a daily basis for HTMs. I just want to say thank you to the HTMs, because every day, hey, I got a phone call to go work on this MRI machine. Oh, now I got to go work on this CT machine. Oh, now I need to go work on ultrasound. Oh, now I need to go work on this X-ray lab. Oh, well, do I get to eat today? Do I get lunch? Okay, I get a little snack. Oh, wait, I got another call. I got to go drive to the the next door building to go work on this other piece of device. And I show up and all I had to do was power cycle it and it was working again. Oh, this network connection was lost. And so, I just want to express that the pressures that HTMs have in a normal environment is still extraordinarily high. And now you test it by bringing COVID into the crisis into the equation. And, I think we have the best HTM industry on the entire planet. And we are so grateful to have them here because we're going to need them. But, this is truly just an amplification during this crisis of what happens in HTM's daily operations. Is this pressure of running here, running there, trying to do this, trying to do that. And it's only going to get worse for HTMs because there's more people retiring right now than entering this space.
No, I agree with you. In addition to that, as far as the Right Repair Act is concerned, or wherever it's going to head, both the OEM, the independent service organization, and the in-house HTM staff, all three of them have the same mission statement. And that is to ensure that the equipment that they are working on is safe for patient use and operator use. That's the mission statement for every HTM. So we're all on the same team here. And now what we just have to do is, as a team, regardless of what team we're playing for right now, is to see how we can work together and play nice in the sandbox.
I would love to just, throw this out there, is that, this is a time to where we need to, really recognize that, regardless of who's servicing the equipment, we want to ensure that the equipment is serviced well. And in doing that, it's inconsequential in who you are. It's ensuring that if you are a patient, or if your loved one becomes a patient, that the equipment's good to go and it's ready to rock and roll and start helping people and helping the patients. And, that's been a focus that, I've been trying to push in our industry for a long time is, let's quit with the division and let's work together and get patients the care that they need, because that's the main goal here. And so I think this test of COVID is an opportunity for us to start breaking down those barriers and collaborating, because this is a problem not any one company can solve. This requires collaboration industry-wide to help tackle this thing. And any company who thinks that they can single-handedly solve this is out of their mind right now. And so for us, this is an opportunity for us to really kind of come closer together, dissolve these barriers, and let's get on the same page and let's just help patients instead of, all these other silly little things that are kind of going on in the industry. Let's just hunker down, focus on saving lives and doing what we can together. And at the end of it, we're going to have a healthy population. And guess what? We're all that population. We're all in this together.
Absolutely.
And so I have one more question for you both. I'd be very interested to hear your opinions on it. And this is a perfect segue. Larry, thank you for that. The reality is today that we're seeing that innovation and we're seeing companies hunker down, and we're seeing companies like Ford Motor Company retooling to create, to build ventilators at a rapid pace to respond to the crisis. With that comes the reality that some of those standards and regulations and normal processes and procedures are being waived out of necessity. And there's been a lot of chatter amongst the biomeds out there and HTM professionals that what will this deregulation or lowering of the standards look like long term, and what's that butterfly effect for the industry? Because it's an industry that's spent a long time increasing and elevating those standards and getting them to where they are today. What are your thoughts on that as we react to this crisis by lowering standards and regulations to retool, refit, rearm? How do you foresee that unfolding in the future?
I think in critical care equipment, the standards are not going to be lowered as much as one would think. I think in the areas where they are lowered through this crisis, they'll go back to where they need to be as soon as the crisis is over, because in the HTM arena, we have to still do what makes sense for the patient to be safe, to be able to be put on that piece of equipment. Let's take a ventilator, for example. You're not going to want to take any shortcuts to get it up and running when we're not in a crisis. But I could see if we are in a crisis and it's put this on the patient right now, otherwise the patient's going to pass away, then yeah, we have to do what we have to do for that crisis period. So I think that as far as losing quality, it'll go back to the high standard it once was before the emergency situation came in. Larry, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be really interesting to watch this, the ventilator business and industry, because it's pretty clear that it's whatever anybody can do to help in ventilators, we're going to take it as a population. There's just not enough of them, and there's a lot of great products out there. But after this is done and we get through this pandemic, I am expecting a lot of success in the ventilator market to say, hey, the ventilators that Ford built, those work great, and they're not an ISO 1345 facility. Oh, by the way, the open source Medtronic ventilators, those are working great, and those were built by companies who don't even build ventilators that weren't mandated by any sort of regulation. So I think at the end of it, what we're going to see is not really a lowering of standard, because you're still looking at image quality, you're still looking at a lot of reliability metrics depending on the equipment that you're talking about. But I think it's going to open the aperture for all of us to question, is it needed to do something an exact way every single time? Or are there other alternatives to satisfy the same need? And so you have MIT coming out with a design of ventilators. I think Virgin came out with another design on trying to build a ventilator. There's a lot of innovation that's entering the space on how to get to the objective, which is how to care for the patient. And I think that this is just a real refocusing of our perspective on how do we take care of the patient rather than what's my standard operating procedure to PM this particular device that I need to do with to the T, then check off every single box, dot every I, and cross every single T. How much of that is just legacy bureaucracy of protocol versus how much is really needed to take care of a patient. And so for me, I think there's going to be a lot of benefits, and I think there's going to be a lot of success kind of coming out of this ventilator issue that we have as internationally that says, hey, we can get the job done, and we can get done really, really, really well. And if we didn't do this, we'd have a lot of people that don't have a ventilator. And then that means really bad things. But because we did become innovative, because we did become open source, because we did invite all these companies and not need to push down regulation, we actually save more lives doing that. So I think that's where I'm excited to kind of see where things go, because I'm seeing a bunch of innovation and a bunch of really phenomenal people coming with a solution rather than kind of looking at a PM checklist or trying to go online or fighting with whoever it is to try and get a PM checklist to know what to do.
And I agree with you, but to play devil's advocate on this, I mean, liability becomes the concern now. So you have a unit that's not from a standard manufacturer, one that comes from, let's say, a Ford, and it fails after this pandemic is over with. I think it'll be scrutinized a lot more in detail than it would be if it was from one of the known manufacturers.
I can't disagree with you there. I would agree. I think that's something that us as a market and us as a population need to weigh out those pros and those cons. Is that is it worth for us to do that and yet sacrifice not having enough ventilators, or is having something better than nothing in that particular case? So I think contextually, this moment in time is a test of what that threshold could be. And I'm of the belief that you can get a lot of things done in non-traditional ways and save lives, not trying to skirt any sort of protocol that's been in place for a long time. But I think it's an opportunity to refine those protocols to become real content that's going to drive the performance of the machines.
Right, I agree. So it's going to require us to have a paradigm shift in the way that our normal natural thinking is now as to way equipment's getting repaired and developed.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen. I think we're just about out of time. This is a fantastic discussion, and I really enjoyed learning from both of you. Larry Wynn from Summit Imaging and Bill Bassick from College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. Any parting shots, gentlemen?
No,
Thank you, HDM. You guys are the best. We love you. Keep everybody safe.
Thanks, Larry. Bill?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.
Appreciate it.